Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings, some injury updates, a couple other pieces of news, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Canucks, the Flames, and the New Jersey Devils. We'll touch on all these updates from the past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End to End Hockey channel. Now before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to leave a comment. And don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we've got another news and review here to discuss. As per usual, we'll start off. We're talking about a couple of signings from our past couple of days. There are two signings that I haven't mentioned from our past couple of days that we'll touch on here in this video. So first, the Washington Capitals will sign Slavin and Miroshinchenko, who's a left winger. He's 21 years old. He was the 20th overall pick in the 2022 draft by the Washington Capitals. Final year of an ELC with an AAV of $950,000. So the Capitals will sign him to a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $925,000. So very interesting signing here from the Caps. So far this year, Miroshinchenko has not played at the NHL level. He has 2 games played at the AHL level, putting up no points. Last year had a pretty solid split between the NHL and the AHL, putting up 1 goal and 4 points in 18 NHL games. Also had 23 goals and 42 points in 53 AHL games, smashing his previous career highs. So very interesting note there. I'm not sure why Miroshinchenko at this point in time hasn't gone to too many AHL games, but the Caps obviously see enough potential to sign him to a 2-year contract extension, so I don't think that's half bad, and I think Miroshinchenko in time should be a solid top 9 forward. So very interesting note there. But former first round pick Ivan Miroshinchenko has signed a 2-year extension with the Washington Capitals. Another player who has signed a 2-year extension with their current organization is New Jersey Devils goaltender Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom is in the final year of a 6-year deal with AAV of $6 million. I think he's still only making $4.25 million on the Devils cap hit. He's 35 years old. Once again, he's a goaltender. He signs a 2-year contract extension with the AAV of $6 million to remain with the New Jersey Devils. This is not a bad pickup here from the Devils. Last year in his first season with the Devils, Markstrom played 49 games with New Jersey, putting up a 2.5 GAA and 900 save percentage. The save percentage wasn't overly good and nowhere near Markstrom level numbers, but he had a pretty solid GAA. So far this year, start of the season, he's been injured quite a bit. He's come back, looked a little bit rusty. He has 5 games played so far this year under his belt, putting up a 4.17 GAA, 875 save percentage. I think as he gets into more reps and more games, those stats should level out. I don't think this is a bad deal. Only 2 years takes him until he's 37, so it's not like it's a long-term contract. If it's not working overly well in the year 2, I could easily see him try and trade him. So very interesting note there, but I think this is a really manageable contract for the New Jersey Devils. So very interesting note there, but I really like this deal from the Devils. So very interesting note there, but we saw 2 signings from the past couple of days as Markstrom signs a 2-year deal with the Devils, Miroshinchenko a 2-year deal with the Capitals. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. We have a handful of injury updates here to talk about. So first, the Buffalo Sabres have placed Zach Benson on injury reserve, and he will miss at least a week with a lower body injury, while Jason Zucker and Yuri Kulik were both absent from practice yesterday and will most likely miss Tuesday's game. So it's a bad blow there for the Sabres, as it could be without a couple of key forwards for this upcoming week. Pyotr Kochetkov was recalled from his conditioning stint in Carolina, while Jacob Slavin and K'Andre Miller have yet to return to practice. So not overly great stuff there, as their 2 key defensemen might still be out for a couple more games with an injury, while Kochetkov's at least going to be back from his conditioning stint and could be nearing a return. That could be a big boost for the Carolina Hurricanes. Jason Dickinson, who's already missed a few games so far with an injury, was placed on injury reserve. It's just to create a little bit of roster flexibility, so not too surprised there. Sam Girard, who could return from his injury, that's kept him out a few weeks this weekend, so he probably won't come back in the next game or 2 during the week for the Colorado Avalanche, but on the weekend he could be an option, so that could be a big boost from the Avalanche. Matt Duchene will miss his 8th straight game on Tuesday. Roope Hintz his 5th straight game on Tuesday with upper body and undisclosed injuries respectively. Bad blows there for the Stars that they're going through a really tough part of their schedule, so they could really use those two guys, but Duchesne and Hintz will remain out for the foreseeable future. Zach Hyman was originally scheduled to be activated on November 1st because that was when he was eligible to come off of long-term injury reserve, but apparently, according to head coach Chris Knoblauch, he's going to be out at least one more week. So very bad blow there for the Oilers. It's not going to get Hyman back as soon as they expected, but he should have still only be out for a week or two and could return in the very near future. Jonah Gadjevich won't travel with the Florida Panthers as he continues to deal with upper body injury, so hopefully it won't be too much longer for Gadjevich, but he's at least not traveling with the team. Warren Foegele was placed on injury reserve and may miss some more time for the Los Angeles Kings. He should be able to come back off of injury reserve in the very near future, but it sounds like he will be out a little bit more longer term with his injury, so not great stuff there from Los Angeles. Matt Zuccarello could return in the next week or two for the Minnesota Wild from his back injury. That could be a big boost for Minnesota Wild's top six to get key forward Matt Zuccarello back into the game action, so really good stuff there for Minnesota. Cole Smith in Nashville is out 3 to 6 weeks with upper body injuries. A bomb 6 forward, so it's not a terrible injury, but still you never want to see a guy go down like that. Connor Brown missed Saturday's game and is out day to day with an undisclosed injury. That's not great news there for the New Jersey Devils, as that's going to be a bad blow for New Jersey. Urho Vakanainen is out day to day with a lower body injury. Matt Rimpey was placed on injury reserve with upper body injury, so some bad blows there for the Rangers to some key depth guys. We already knew Rimpey was going to be out for a little bit of time, so seeing him placed on injury reserve, not too surprising, but still bad to see Vakanainen is out. Tyson Forrester missed Sunday's game with a lower body injury and may miss a few more games and was placed on injury reserve, so it's not overly great news there for the Philadelphia Flyers. Sean Couturier returned to game action after missing one game with upper body injury on Sunday, so that's really good news there for the Flyers to see their captain Sean Couturier come back from injury reserve, so really good stuff there for Philadelphia. For Pittsburgh, Justin Brazeau missed Saturday's and Monday's games with upper body injury and is out day to day, so it doesn't seem like he's going to miss too much more time, but given the blazing start Brazeau was on, that's not great news there for the Penguins. Well, Noah Acciari left Monday's game with an upper body injury and didn't return, so that could be a really big piece of their bottom six that could be out for the next little bit for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ryan Reeves may have a serious lower body injury and could miss some significant time and was placed on injury reserve. Liljegren left Saturday's game after taking a puck to the face, but was in the lineup for Sunday's game for San Jose. And William Eklund missed Sunday's game with a lower body injury and is out day to day, but he might be able to return from game action on Wednesday. So really interesting out there. Good to see that Eklund could be back in the very near future. Liljegren then went any time after leaving Saturday's game, but it's bad news to see that Reeves has been placed on injury reserve. Kaapo Kakko was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Saturday, making his season debut. That's a massive boost for the Kraken to get Kakko back. Robert Thomas returned to the lineup on Monday after missing 4 games with upper body injury. It's a big boost for the Blues to get one of their top 6 forwards back. Chris Tanev suffered a bad injury on Saturday and was stretchered off the game and will miss some significant time, but good news, he has been discharged from the hospital and has now been placed on injury reserve, so it's bad blows there for the Maple Leafs to lose Chris Tanev. And William Nylander missed his 2nd straight game on Saturday with his lower body injury, but was good to go and got back into game action on Monday, so really good news there for Toronto. Noah Hanifin, who's been out the last 10 games with lower body injury, is looking to return on Tuesday, which could be a really big boost there for the Vegas Golden Knights. Pierre-Luc Dubois is out an extended period of time with a lower body injury and missed Saturday's game and might require surgery, so Dubois might be out if he does get surgery for like a couple of months. That would be a bad blow for the Capitals. Well, Dylan Strome returned from his lower body injury on Saturday. It's good to see that Strome was at least able to get back into game action. And after missing the full season up until this point, Adam Lowry will be activated off of injury reserve and return from his hip surgery that he had in the offseason on Tuesday. So that's going to be a big boost for the Jets to get their captain and third-line center back for the first time this year. So really interesting out there, but that has a long list of very interesting injury updates from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of quick recalls and reassignments. So if you look at the recalls and reassignments, the Carolina Hurricanes have recalled Dominic Fensor with Slavin and Miller still out. This does make a whole bunch of sense. The Chicago Blackhawks, after placing Dickinson on injury reserve, sent down Landon Slaggert and called up Oliver Moore, so they're going to give Moore a look at the NHL level. Great news there for the Blackhawks after his blistering start to the season. Taylor McCarr, after playing in his first career NHL game, as well as Wyatt Amadot, were both sent down by the Colorado Avalanche. So bad stuff there. Well, Tristan Nielsen and Jack Khan, newly signed Tristan Nielsen, as well as Jack Khan, were both also called up by the Avalanche. So I'm not sure if those two will get into game action. They could just be a little bit more provided depth, but very interesting note there. The New York Rangers have recalled Jacob Kemlar from the AHL, as well as Connor Mackey. Mackey's due to the Vanakainen injury, but the reason they call it Kemlar is because they sent back down Brennan Othman. So that's not too surprising, as Kemlar's had a really solid start to the AHL season, while Othman has barely been able to get into any NHL action. On top of that, the Ottawa Senators swapped Merrilainen with Shepherd. So very interesting note there. They've recalled leaving Merrilainen, not too surprising there, and Shepherd's back in the AHL. The Detroit Red Wings reassigned Austin Watson to the AHL, so not too surprised there. Seems that they're getting a little bit healthier on the forward group. Due to some injuries, including the guys like Couturier and Forrester, the Flyers have recalled Jacob Gaucher as well as Emil Andrea, so very interesting note there. With the injury to Ryan Reeves, the San Jose Sharks recalled Ethan Cardwell. With the injury to Chris Tanev, the Maple Leafs recalled Dakota Mermis, and with the injury to Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Washington Capitals recalled Spencer Smallman. So very interesting note there, but some very interesting recalls and reassignments, including some big recalls such as guys like Moore in Chicago, Kemlar in NYR, Merrilainen in Ottawa, and Cardwell in San Jose. So very interesting note there. Next, we're going over to a couple of quick waiver updates. When we last did our news update video, Michael Milne was on waivers. I said there was a very lucky chance he would clear because he was on season opening injury reserve, and he's more of an AHL level guy anyways. No surprise, he wound up clearing, so I don't think that's too much of a surprise at all. Also on waivers over the past couple of days was William Trudeau in the Montreal Canadiens organization. I think he started season opening injury reserve too. He's also an AHL level guy, so I wasn't expecting him to get claimed either. Not too surprised he cleared, so he's back in the AHL, so very good stuff there for the Canadiens. And then Kyle Burroughs, who started the season in injured reserve, was placed on waivers by the LA Kings to be reassigned to the AHL. Now, he is a guy who I thought could potentially be claimed because he's a solid like 6'7" defenseman. However, he was making over $1 million, so I thought there was a likelier chance he probably winds up clearing than getting claimed, and he did wind up getting cleared, so very interesting note there. But Burroughs, Trudeau, and Milne were all on waivers and all cleared, so very interesting note there. And lastly here, going over to a couple of big interesting pieces of news. So first, Ilya Samsonov, Max Willman, and Klim Kostin have all signed over in the KHL, so very interesting note there. Samsonov was a former starting level goaltender at the NHL level, really fell out of favor over the past couple of years, turned into a backup, wasn't able to get an NHL level contract this year, not even a PTO, and he's now gone back overseas to the KHL, so very interesting note there. Max Ullman was a long-time AHL level player, got a couple of stints to the NHL level, but was mostly an AHL level guy, so not too surprising to see him go to KHL. And Klim Kostin, the former first-round pick of the St. Louis Blues, has been a solid bomb six forward, bouncing around a couple of different teams over the past couple of years at the NHL level. Also wasn't able to get a contract, so he signs over in the KHL, so very interesting note there. But 3 guys have signed over in the KHL who are former NHL level players. Evgeny Malkin was fined $5,000 for a slash on Saturday against the Winnipeg Jets defenseman Logan Stanley, so not too surprising there, but there's no suspension or other discipline, just a $5,000 fine, so very interesting note there. The Dallas Stars are set to host the 2027 Stadium Series in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, so very interesting note there. This isn't going to be for this upcoming season, but for the following season, so very interesting note there. But on February 20th, 2027, it's been announced that the Dallas Stars will host a Stadium Series game against an unknown opponent in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, the football stadium, so very interesting note there, and that seems like it's going to be a very, very interesting Stadium Series game, not this upcoming season, but the following year, so very interesting note there. And we saw a small trade between the St. Louis Blues and the Washington Capitals. It was just swapping a couple of depth defensemen. Calle Rosen, who I think was in Washington, has been moved to the St. Louis Blues, and in exchange they acquired Corey Schooneman from the St. Louis Blues. Both guys were AHL level guys this year. They have had some stints at the NHL level, Rosen more than Schooneman, however Schooneman is younger than Rosen, so very interesting out there. I'm not sure at this point in time who sort of wins this deal. I do think there's a pretty solid win-win sort of deal because I do think these are both some pretty solid depth defensemen, but I'm not even sure if either of these guys are going to get very much NHL level playing time, so very interesting out there. But very interesting swap as Schooneman goes to Washington, and Rosen goes back to St. Louis. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got 3 trade rumors here to talk about, 3 very intriguing trade rumors. So first, when it comes to Frank Seravalli, he was talking about the Carolina Hurricanes recently on, I think, his radio hit, and he mentions that he thinks that the Carolina Hurricanes are shopping around for a stopgap defenseman. Now, he says that he's checked in with some sources who think this is a very likely possibility. The Canes are currently without Gostisbehere, they're without Keandre Miller, they're without Jacob Slavin. I know there's a couple of possibilities of some of those guys returning in the very near future, but they at least want someone who's just on the smaller side of things, who can be a stopgap, maybe like third pair defenseman option until some of those bigger names get back. So I'm not sure who they'll try and target. We've heard a lot about Milne and Burroughs in Philadelphia as a potential trade option. He's a guy who can be a 6'7" defenseman. He's already been placed on waivers. He's been basically being up and down this year with the Philadelphia Flyers. I could see him be a very interesting sort of stopgap option. A couple of other smaller name defensemen that could come to mind would be a guy like maybe Jacob Bryson in Buffalo makes some sense. Jordan Harris, once he's back from his injury, that could make some sense. There's probably a couple of other smaller level defensemen that I think could also make some sense for the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll have to wait and see if some sort of trade comes to fruition. I don't think it'd be like some sort of a massive trade where the Canes are giving up first round picks, second round picks, top prospects. I don't think they're there yet, but I do think if there was like some sort of a young small defenseman that only take like a 5th or 6th round pick to acquire, I think the Canes will be pouncing on that in maybe the next week or two, with Slavin, Gostisbehere, and Miller still injured. So keep an eye on the Carolina Hurricanes as they are looking for a stopgap goalie option for the next couple of weeks until they're able to get some of their key defensemen back. So keep your eye on the Carolina Hurricanes. Another team we have to keep our eye on is the Calgary Flames. They are still in a pretty bad position right now. They are currently, I think, at a 3-9-2 record. They're 6 games below 500. They have had an abysmal start to the season. They're one of the worst teams in the NHL. Offensively, defensively, they have the worst record in the NHL, so there's a very likely chance the Calgary Flames are going to be one of the bigger sellers this year. And David Pagnotta says as the season progresses, he expects we hear more about Blake Coleman's name, because he definitely thinks that there are teams out there who are going to be heavily in on Blake Coleman. And I think that makes tons of sense. Coleman, I think, has 2 years left on his contract. He's got a $4.9 million cap hit. We saw his impact with the Tampa Bay Lightning during their back-to-back cup runs. He is a very skilled third-line left winger / center on a Stanley Cup winning team. And I think with a lot of other teams who could desperately use a solid like third-line guy to sort of round out that forward group, I think there'd be teams checking in. A team that comes to mind we talked about recently would be the New Jersey Devils. On top of that, I think the Mammoth could benefit from a guy like Blake Coleman. The Canucks will make some sense. I could see the Oilers have some interest in him. I could see the Avalanche have some interest in him if they could work it out cap-wise. I think Winnipeg would have some interest. I think Tampa would have some interest trying to bring him back. I think Florida would have some interest. Like, there's a whole bunch of teams who would have some interest. I just don't know how they work out cap-wise, but imagine if some one of these really big cup-contending teams adds up Blake Coleman for not only this year, because he's got 2 years left at a $4.9 million cap hit. So we should wait and see on that. No guarantees on if even the Flames are open to retaining some money or what the ask would be at this point in time. I gotta think it's gotta be at least a 2nd round pick and a solid prospect, if not a 1st round pick for Blake Coleman. So we should wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Blake Coleman, as if the Calgary Flames continue to slip and we continue to hear more and more about them going into sell mode, it seems like Blake Coleman's going to be one of the first names that could wind up being moved by the Calgary Flames. So we should wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Rick Dahliwahl. He was talking about the Vancouver Canucks. You know, the Canucks have been looking for a second-line center over the past couple of weeks, basically since the offseason. Well, Rick Dahliwahl says that this team has, according to his sources, kicked tires on trying to acquire Steven Stamkos from the Nashville Predators. Now, I don't even want to begin to think the ways that they could potentially make this work cap-wise. Stamkos has this year plus 2 more seasons left at an $8 million cap hit. So with the Canucks being a team who doesn't have an overabundance in cap, and with a lot of big extensions kicking in next year with Garland and with Demko, I'm not sure how they fit that in cap-wise, but Stamkos is the sort of player that could really work in the Canucks organization as like a 2-3 see behind a guy like Elias Pettersson. Like, I think he could be a really solid piece. Now, something that I saw a couple of reporters mention and bring up that I think is very interesting is that the reason why Stamkos has had such a poor start to the season in Nashville is because he has no one to get him the puck. Like, Stamkos in the right organization is a 40 goal scorer and an 80-point player. He's that good of a player. But in the Nashville Predators, there's no one to get him the puck, so his stats look abysmal to start the season. They're even worse than last year, when I think he had 27 goals and just over 50 points. So once again, we should wait and see what happens there. Stamkos is a name that I keep on hearing more and more of. If the Preds fall out of the playoff race, I think he'll become a very likely commodity to get dealt, because he has that pedigree of a Stanley Cup champion, of a really solid goal scorer that a lot of teams could really use. And if he finds his right situation, that could be a really solid pickup there for a whole bunch of different teams. Now, I'm not sure if the Preds really want to retain a whole bunch of money or take on a bad contract. We shall wait and see what happens there, but I could definitely see the Canucks have some major interest with Stamkos, given the fact they really need a second-line center. I think that could be a really solid fit, but it'd have to be for the right price and the right money amount. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm going to talk for today. I'll let you guys thoughts. What do you think about Stamkos? Does he get moved? Could he go to Vancouver? Do you think that the Calgary Flames will move Blake Coleman? What could be the return package they get? And do you think that the Carolina Hurricanes will get a stopgap defensive upgrade? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus all of the news updates, the injury updates, the signings, the trade, all the other pieces of news, all that stuff down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you'd like to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. Also a blog with news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.